This is Lesson 2. Humans Meet the Terrible Lizard. While dinosaur bones and fossils have long been a part of human history, it wasn't until the 1800s that these bones began to be painstakingly assembled and scientifically recognized. Charles Darwin, who we learned about in Lesson 1, wrote a book called On the Origin of Species in 1859, giving the world a theory to explain these fossils and bones that didn't match any known species so far. At the same time, there were many other scientists who opposed Darwin, some believing more of a theistic evolutionary approach, and others remaining utterly convinced that God made these creatures the same day he made all the other animals as depicted in Genesis. A whole new field of study entered the world. It was filled with scientists, historians, and philosophers who were bent on classifying and understanding the evidence that was being uncovered. What an exciting time that would have been. Let's take a look at one of the first documented discoveries and how that led to the field we know today as paleontology, the study of ancient fossils, geology, and bones. Meet the Megalosaurus. Have you ever accidentally put on a pair of socks that belonged to an older sibling and thought, oops, these are too big to be mine? While fossils have long been discovered, collected, and displayed in museums and are too big in universities for further study, it was a massive piece of femur bone in 1676 that led to the conclusion that some of these fossils were too big to be from any known creature. Some believed that this giant thigh bone found in the Stonesfield Quarry in Oxford, England, belonged to the giants or mighty men that are briefly mentioned in the Bible in Genesis 6:4. But speculation continued. It was the 1800s that marked the beginning of a professional acceptance of extinct dinosaurs, and nearly 200 years after the femur bone was found, a man named William Buckland studied it, as well as a partial jaw and other fossils to try to find answers. He met with a leading scientist, zoologist, and naturalist at the time, George Cuvier, who lived in France. Cuvier was known for comparing fossils to modern-day animals to look for similarities and differences and see what he could learn. This was called comparative autonomy. He stated that the findings looked similar to a giant reptile. A few years later, in 1824, William Buckland released an article publishing his findings and named the first dinosaur the Megalosaurus. Meet Iguanodon. Dr. Mantell and his wife Mary Ann lived in Sussex, England. They were on a house call in 1822 when Mary Ann discovered some interesting teeth embedded in some rocks on the side of the road. She excitedly told her husband, who thought they might be from an extinct animal, and sent them to various experts for opinions. There were many different suggestions and some mistakes along the way, but eventually some of the teeth made their way to the very same man that William Buckland consulted with, George Cuvier, now known as the father of paleontology. Cuvier's first impression was that the tooth was from a rhino. However, Dr. Mantell disagreed. When a museum curator remarked that it looked more like a large iguana tooth, Dr. Mantell sent more teeth that he had collected to Cuvier, asking him to look again based on new evidence. Cuvier changed his mind and agreed with Dr. Mantell, retracting his initial statement. In 1825, Dr. Mantell published his first paper announcing the discovery of a new species, the Iguanodon, only 1 year after the Megalosaurus. Puzzle pieces. For just a moment, imagine that your parents brought 4 massive puzzles from the store. We're not talking about 100-piece puzzles. We're talking about the teeny tiny 1,000-piece puzzles. What if they put them in a huge bin and shook them all up, mixing 4,000 pieces all together, and then they threw away the box so they had no reference of picture? Then they took this bin of pieces and shook it over your entire yard and house, hiding the pieces in literally thousands of different places. Some were buried, and some became damaged in the process or lost their identifying features like their color. Now, imagine your job is to reconstruct each of the puzzles. This is a little bit what it was like and still is for the paleontologist who is trying to piece together a bone they found to make a skeleton or reconstruction. There is no master image to go off of, only clues, discoveries, and the knowledge of those who have gone on before them. There have been many mistaken representations over the years that have been remedied or fixed as new information is found that helps to paint the picture of a little more clearly. In the 1800s, with far few tools for less knowledge and fewer fossils and bones to work with, identifying a new species was a bit of an educated guess that often changed over time. The first Iguanodon looked nothing like the picture here in the teacher's guide, but coming up with some of the first models was a very important job. While the scientific community accepted that dinosaurs had existed, the world at large probably had a large time grasping what these individual discoveries meant until they saw the pictures and models. One man, Richard Owen, helped to pave the way. He worked with a man named Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins to consult on Hawkins's reconstruction of dinosaurs for the Crystal Palace. This was a special exhibit that was designed by some amazing architects together with Prince Albert. This first dinosaur exhibit brought a sense of wonder and awe as people began to imagine what these creatures might have looked like. Classification. The 1800s were a remarkable time. New species were being discovered, huge advancements in science and technology were being made, architectural wonders were being raised up, and an entirely new field of science was blossoming. Now that these new prehistoric creatures were being depicted or shown and revealed, they needed to be classified and organized in the same way as other animals. Richard Owen, the man who helped consult on the dinosaur exhibit we learned about, was the first man to coin the term dinosaur that we use today. Dinosaurs means terrible lizard, a term that some paleontologists today don't like because... I dropped my glasses. Paleontologists today don't like because dinosaurs were not all reptiles. Today, dinosaurs can be organized into two main categories. Cetacea, lizard hips, and Ornithischia, bird hips. From there, they are further classified by their features. Take a look at the chart on the next page and see if you can remember the class of the two dinosaurs we learned about today. That concludes lesson 2.